Um, Good morning, and you are welcome to this webinar looking at COVID-19 and Africa's higher education. And I'm sure there are people joining on from all parts of Africa. So let me just say, I am here speaking from Lagos, at the headquarters of Business Day Media Limited in Apapa. I'm delighted to welcome you to this important webinar that started yesterday. And for many of us that watched it yesterday, I'm sure it was a very, very enriching session because of the solid, strong, and powerful panel that we had yesterday, talking about how Africa higher education is responding to COVID-19. Let me just say to you ahead that today is going to be as powerful, if not more powerful, than what you experienced yesterday, because the same panel again, today's panel has been carefully put together to ensure that we deliver the insights and the understanding of how Africa and in some specific cases, Nigeria's higher education can respond to COVID-19. I am Dr. Owo Okiti, and I'm the MD of Business Day. And on behalf of Business Day and other group, CHID and the University of South Africa that have put this together, I thank you for joining us, and I really, really do hope that the time that you spend with us here this morning is going to be worth your while. Before I go, let me thank the panel for agreeing to do this. I can see Professor Ebokare, Professor Sandy, Professor Benjamin, and of course, our Honorable Senator. I thank you all. We appreciate your time, your energy, and the insights that you are about to share. We do not take this for granted. We know that you are all very busy people, so you are welcome. And to Odinaka Hilo, thank you for the concept and thank you for putting this together. And to all our viewers, wherever you are in Africa or all over the world, you are welcome. And I thank you, and I hope you enjoy the discussions ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Okiti. We are going to start talking about the real business of the day, but we'll need to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll introduce the eminent panelists. In no special order, but I'll start from the distinguished Senator of the Federal Republic, Professor Sandy Ono. You are welcome.
My pleasure, thank you.
Professor Ono is the Deputy Senate Committee Chair on Higher Education and Tertiary Education, with also representing the National Assembly on therefrom, Tertiary Education Trust Fund. You are welcome, distinguished Senator.
Thanks.
Then we also have Professor B. Ola Akonde, who is joining us from the US. I hope I'm right, sir. Assistant Vice Chancellor International Affairs, Africa, Washington University in St. Louis. Hi, St. Louis, sir.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Then we have Professor Yakubu Chefu, who is the Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian University, former Vice Chancellor himself. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Francis. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Dr. Linda Maya. I think you were here yesterday. Am I right about that? She's the Director of Operations and Sector Support, Universities of South Africa. Dr. Maya, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I think basically that's the panelists, and we are going to be talking about leading in times of global crisis, the role of education leaders and government in rethinking and making higher education and learning in Africa. I think the point basically for us is to have each of these panelists who are from the different areas of policy making. We are addressing policy individuals. We are addressing the government and the leaders of the higher education sector. But for those who are joining us, the audience, I'd like you to post your questions on the Q&A section. You could go ahead with your chat, but if you want us to address your questions, please you post it on the Q&A and then give us an idea of any of the panelists who you would like to address the questions, if it's not a general question you are putting forth. Now, I also need to say that each of the panelists is going to get, first of all, 10 minutes to give us a comprehensive background of what he or she would like to put forward at this point in time. And then we'll have to come back again to address the questions which have been put out, and some other questions arising from discussions as the moderator has collated some of the critical issues under discussion. But before we kick off, I would just like us to have a little bit of a background, because we are dealing now with a kind of emergency. We are saying that we are on emergency mode, basically, all over the world with higher education as a result of COVID-19. But one of the issues is to find out exactly whether all nations are on the same code level of emergency. What kind of code level would Africa be? And since we are talking about rethinking education, the key terms are rethinking and remaking. And if you are rethinking, it simply means that something is out of balance, and that in order to remake it, it means that something needs to be done in order to move to a new norm. So the old, we are in between stories, basically, to use the words of Thomas Berry. The old story is no longer working. So how are we going to address the new story? So what are the crisis points? What are we supposed to do differently? Not forgetting that we are dealing with government and the leadership of the higher education sector. Who has to do it, and how should it be done? These are critical issues we want to deal with. And I would like to start with Professor Sandy Ono, who represents the government of Nigeria in this discourse. Professor, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the organizers for this forum. It's a beautiful one, and I think it's important that all of us begin to rethink about education and what kind of education is best for Africa. I would like to proceed this way. Education is invaluable. Indeed, proper education is a sine qua non for real progress and development in society. Now, what is proper education for Africa? For me, proper education for Africa is that one that enables you to develop supreme confidence in yourself, in your thought processes. That education that stimulates your ability to think for yourself and think for society in such a way as to create meaningful progress and add value. The point I'm making here is when education doesn't allow you that liberty, when education doesn't avail you the originality, when education doesn't give you the confidence to look at society, look at the challenges of society, and speak to them and act in such a way that takes your own peculiarities, your own uniqueness, with a view to developing society, then there is a problem with that kind of education. If for all the education you get, all you do is ape concepts and theories from Europe and America, and you do not even domesticate them in tandem with the realities of Africa, then we are not making progress. I would like to cite it as an example. There are three things basically that appear to have question of down, and you apply it to Europe and America. You agree with me, for instance, that the accommodation, the housing situation in Europe and America is near optimum in most places. The population density is low. In most homes, you have one person per room. So when you're applying lockdown in Europe and America, social distancing is a part of it naturally. Is that the same in Africa? If you ask for a lockdown in Africa, are you sure you are also going to achieve social distancing in the process? If in Africa, in most locations where 70% of people live, people are 3, 4, 5, 6 in a room, sometimes more. If you adopt the lockdown in the maximum manner that we're expected to do to check coronavirus, will you also be able to achieve social distancing, for instance? The point I'm making is that whatever measures there are globally on any matter whatsoever, it is important for our education to avail us the confidence to adopt, if we must, these measures and domesticate them in such a way that make meaningful impact for Africa and its politics and its economics. When our education doesn't provide us that liberty, that confidence, that reach to be original, then we are not there yet. And our challenge is to make sure our education takes us there. I would also like to address another variable relating to this, the cure for COVID-19. There is a lot of politics with pharmaceuticals. We are looking at a situation where every nation in Europe, where America wants it to be that they are the ones who brought the cure for coronavirus. What is the attitude of African intellectuals? What is the attitude of African technologists and scientists? Would we, as usual, wait for them to be the ones who would provide this cure for us? Or we too, as nations, who are educated, who have intellectuals and scientists and technologists, would learn our way to these members of our society and encourage them to bring forth a cure for the virus? What will be our attitude to our scientists who come out and say they are almost there with the cure? Would we begin to demonize and minimize them and make them look like they don't have capacity? It is time we begin to know that our people can do as much and even better than what these guys out there are doing. It is time we begin to look inwards. It's time we begin to encourage ourselves, because that is the bane of our education as I see it. Our education must be relevant in such a manner that allows us to develop local initiatives, local remedies for our own situation. This extends to politics. Up till today, I do not know why the option A4 system was cast overboard in Nigeria. It reduced costs, it's more transparent. If it had any issues, we would have since perfected it and made it better. Must we aid concepts and practices and processes of Europe and America for Africa? I think that is wrong. So the key to our challenge, like I said, is to believe in ourselves. If we remember, when China started manufacturing, if you wanted to look down on any product, call it made in China. Are we still saying that today? We go to India, all their cars, the clothes they wear, they are all made in India. They begin in small fashion. They encourage themselves. They show confidence in their ability. And over time, they grow and they develop. The point I'm making in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, is that it is time Africa begins to look inwards. It is time Africa begins to understand that we must re-engineer our education in such a way as to produce men and women of confidence who can use what we have to get what we want. There are people manufacturing cars in Africa. Innocent in Nigeria is producing cars. Government is hardly patronizing Innocent. People are hardly patronizing Innocent in spite of the quality of cars they are producing. I expect us to turn around, and I think that is part of my responsibility to speak to other stakeholders on the side of government for us have confidence in what we have, inject that confidence into the educational system, and make sure we produce men and women who can answer to our challenges in such a manner that reduces our overdependence on Europe and America. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ono, distinguished senator. You basically raised the issues of adaptation, that we need to adapt solutions to our circumstances. And then, of course, you raised the issue of legacy thinking, the way we engage the skills, higher education policies, and so on. And that we need to patronize the local skills, we need to patronize the local industry and ensure that our education system serves the purpose of our nation. So thank you for that. By the time we come back, we would like you to also address the issues of how these crisis time in the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 era, how you intend to adapt oversight functions within the higher education to resolve, to create the right environment for the new norms that we believe will be determined. But we are not going to return to the old norms. And then, of course, what should government do differently? What is government doing now? What should it do differently in a way to respond to the new environment? We will come back to you by the time so that you can have an opportunity to deal with some of these issues. I think I have to move to Dr. Meyer. We would like to have your perspective in our summary of the issues of rethinking and remaking the higher education now, in post-COVID Africa. What are the issues now, and what are the issues tomorrow? So, Linda.
Thank you very much. So I think the current issues is obviously around defining the role of leadership, not only within the higher education context, but also within what each country is doing to lead the drive in dealing with this COVID-19 specific areas that we are busy with. So we have seen real social justice issues emerging currently, where students are being expected to do emergency remote learning, for example, but they don't have electricity security or they don't have connectivity security. And within the broader context, in South Africa, for example, 2.5 million students and academic staff have been affected by the COVID-19 downturn. And across Africa, we know that 9.8 million students have been affected, as UNESCO has told us. But what solutions are we driving to ensure continuity within this very difficult and volatile time? And internet access across Africa, and I think the point I'm trying to make is that we're looking to online learning to solve this very peculiar problem. And Africa is sitting with a 24% connectivity rate. In South Africa, we're fortunate we have a 67.7% connectivity rate. And the leadership in higher education is required to drive the change within this systemic disorder that we are finding ourselves in. And such financial volatility and uncertainty is emerging within the marketplace. So we look to what it is that we're doing, for example, from a policy level. How are we collaborating? How are we engaging? Why are we looking to Europe or to America, for that matter, to drive solutions for us? We need to start collaborating more coherently within the African construct so that we're able to contribute and bring our own solutions, as Professor Sandy has so rightfully pointed out. So there are a myriad of governance structures and participatory structures that we have emanated in South Africa. And for us, what we really are starting to focus on is the grappling question of what is the new normal? What is the post-COVID-19 situation that we will be finding ourselves in, not only as an African society, but within the higher education sector? And how are we going to use this opportunity positively, that we don't have all our students selecting to go and study overseas, but that they start seeing the value in really participating in Africa and attending African institutions. So for us, as we envisage the new normal or the post-COVID-19 construct, we're really starting to focus on how diversified education delivery models in the blended learning and the U-learning and all of these adaptabilities are possible. But it cannot be possible within an unequal and an unjust society where people do not have access to these modalities to make them real. Otherwise, they're just fictitious plasters that we're trying to, or bandages that we're trying to put on a specific problem. So we are anticipating a number of challenges. One, obviously, with students entering a very probable recessionary market when they continue, where employers might be questioning the quality of the class of COVID-19 and how it is that they graduated, how institutions are supporting academics and research imperatives, and also the very real challenge about supporting higher education institutions, both public and private, from how their financial stability will work into the future. Because we know that institutions are suffering significantly. Students are not paying fees, they're unable to pay fees. Many of their parents have been retrenched or put on short time, and institutions are faced with situations where there might very well be institutions that have to pay money back to students because they haven't made use of particular services. So what do we hope will happen post-COVID-19? We hope that Africa will see this as a collaborative opportunity, that our students will stay locally, that we will work on models of social justice and student-centeredness, that we'll have enabling legislative frameworks that support academics and students, but most of all, that we stop looking to the rest of the world to drive Africa's solutions. We are the only people that can address our own problems, and we need to be collaborative and ensure that we are able to come up with solutions that are commensurate with what we need within our construct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. And I think you've raised a lot of issues and proposed quite a number of solutions. Issues, for instance, like equity. You use one expression that really got me, that if we don't address the issues of quality and equity, we will be delivering fictitious solutions. And I think this is very, very critical. And I would like to have you ponder about, we come back, how do we move from the emergency mode to a sustainability mode? In other words, we basically, our reactions now is basically emergency driven. How do we now ensure that the new practices are entrenched, they are within the system, and what are the intervention clusters that will be required for us to be able to ensure that all these beautiful suggestions about Africa taking care of, taking possession of its own future, determining its own future, will become realistic in the time to come. I think it's time to have the perspective of Professor Akonde. Prof, we want to hear your perspective, what dealing with now, dealing with the future, given also your experience and background, having been within the American system for a number of years. What do you think we need to do differently? What do you think we are not doing right? And how do you think we can get there?
Good afternoon, good morning. Can I pull up my screen so that I can just go through my PowerPoint real quick? Is that coming from your side or is that coming from me?
Yes. While the professor is putting on the screen, I need to state that we have 90 participants already, and the charts are coming. And I think people are still joining us. And then the questions have also started coming in, so you need to pay attention.
I just want to clarify. You have my PowerPoint. Are you putting it up on the screen, or how do we go?
You can put it up.
Oh,
but I would say that if you're having any issues with it, I think you can probably just talk to it. The document.
I'll just speak to it. I wasn't of the opinion that I would be doing that. That's why we had sent the PowerPoint to you a couple of days ago. But that's okay. That's another issue. I'm just going to take a few minutes to say that with this pandemic, we are facing what I would characterize as an equal opportunity pandemic. It is it is impacting all of us at the same level. And when I say all of us, I'm speaking about all institutions around the world, United States, Africa. And so it begs the question, what are we going to do? And how do we ensure that in the midst of this very critical pandemic that we remain relevant? And we use this pandemic perhaps as a staging point, an opportunity for us to rethink our current strategy and our practices, a chance for us to reassess how do we engage the present, but more importantly, how can we determine our resolve moving into the future? The future is challenging for us when you think about just the implications of this pandemic from a health perspective, and also from a ability to be able to deliver instructions at our respective institutions. But I would like to look at it in basically 5 areas of focus. One, I see this pandemic as an opportunity for us to have a sense of resolve. And what I mean by that is that it's an opportunity for us to find a way to address the immediate challenge that we face. It also gives us an opportunity for us to be resilient, and that is to be prepared to hold our own, to pivot, to look at different ways of doing things. And then I think it's an opportunity for us to also reimagine, to find new ways of doing things, to be creative, to be able to reassess and to adjust in a way that will make our presence and our delivery methods more meaningful. And then lastly, I believe it's an opportunity for us to reform, to change what we do and how we do it. But I think in looking at that situation, these are times in which we must ask the real critical question, and that is that does COVID make us relevant, or does it make us irrelevant? And it's an opportunity for us to really think about what I call the shifting evidence of higher education now as a result of COVID. I'll give you an example. We have now found how important it is for us to embrace digital as a means of engagement, as a means of teaching, as a means of delivery of curriculum. For a long time, I think online education was seen simply as just an addendum to the educational process. The fact that we cannot be face to face, like we've seen like we've done in recent times, really calls for us to embrace online in a way that perhaps we have not done so in recent past. And what I'm talking about now is what I call a confluence of online and face to face. Essentially, the click, which is the online, and the break, which is the face to face. And sort of merge the two together in order to provide a more buoyant, a more engaging higher education process. It's a real opportunity now for institutions to consider their investment strategy in this mode of education moving forward. In the United States, when the pandemic broke, what most institutions had to do was essentially to ask their students to go home and then to continue the educational process, since it was in the middle of the spring semester, so that they can to continue the education process online. And so you've had different methods of delivering this online educational process. It was an opportunity for institutions to have a seamless transition from face-to-face to online. And the reality of this is that I believe that, even after the pandemic, we will not be able to go back to the way things are. What we have to consider doing is simply, how do we learn from all the lessons and all the things that we adjustments that we made during this pandemic, and how do we make sure that we are more relevant, we are able to deliver curriculum, we do it in in a very creative way. And I end with this. I think that this pandemic is an opportunity for us to focus on 4 critical areas. One, to develop new technological centric approach to teaching, to assess what kind of curriculum we're going to be teaching, particularly in terms of meaningful curriculum as it addresses the challenges that we face today and moving forward. It's a chance for us to also be able to find ways to engage our students more intentionally than we've done in the past. And I think it also forces us to consider perhaps developing new business models for how we, for institutions of higher learning in terms of how we can remain relevant moving forward. I think we need to think about this pandemic not as an end in itself, but an opportunity, a crisis that is giving us an opportunity to pivot in higher education, to be more creative, to find meaningful ways of addressing the challenges of the present and also of the future. And I believe that institutions that actually miss this opportunity, institutions that don't take advantage of this opportunity are going to be less relevant and are going to miss that opportunity that they have with this epidemic. I end with this. I think that as we move forward, institutions must conduct what I would consider an audit, and that is that how best can we engage our students moving forward? How effective are we in delivering curriculum and education to our students? And how can we use this moment in time to make adjustments in real time to the way we deliver education? And I believe that those institutions that do so, those institutions that welcome this opportunity will be much stronger. And I think the educational process will be even more effective. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to this.
Thank you very much. Beautiful. I need to also say that Professor Akonde has a new appointment. He's the president-elect, Champlain College. It's a 142-year-old institution in the United States. In spite of your busy schedule, you found time to be here. Thank you very much for those perspectives. I think one of the critical issues that I can take out of this is that there are opportunities even in this crisis for us to rethink, to strategize, and then to ensure that we become relevant in the new norm, in the new environment that we are getting into. As we come back, I would like you to pay some more attention to modeling. What are the kind of business models, for instance, do we need to pay attention to in Africa? Because the higher education system is basically a brick and mortar system. We need to debrick the policies, debrick the mentality, and then debrick the practices in order for us to. So we would like you to give us some more perspective in this idea of modeling that you talked about when we come back. And that takes us to Professor Yakubu Chefu, a former Vice Chancellor, who basically was Vice Chancellor of a very unique university. I think he's probably the only one that was a community university. We had to be very innovative and very creative as a Vice Chancellor to run that university and to be able to complete his tenure successfully. He's currently in charge of the Secretary General of the Association of the Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities. I would like you to give us your perspective, then we'll come back and engage you a little bit. Especially with the issue of policy, you are very experienced. What do you think Africa needs to do differently from your perspective?
Yeah, Francis, thank you very much. I take up on the points that Professor Akande mentioned in terms of us doing an institutional audit that will find out exactly where we are in terms of the options that are available as far as managing the COVID-19 pandemic implications on higher education in Africa is concerned. I'd like to remind us that higher education globally was in a state of disruption before the pandemic started. As you are well aware, a number of disruptive technologies have emerged in the last 10 years that was actually impacting the way we teach, the way we learn, the way we conduct research. 10 years ago, the global universities did not have artificial intelligence high up on their agenda. Machine learning was just at the horizon, but now it has come and it's redefining virtually the way we work, the way we do research and stuff like that. So we're all trying to, many universities across the world, we're trying to manage the disruptions that especially educational technology companies had foisted on us. Then comes the COVID-19 that redefines the entire landscape. And we're then now caught in a situation whereby something that was in the horizon was like snowballed right to our front door, and we're all caught scrambling to find a way out. Last year, the CDC and one of its technology partners, rather Nigeria Limited, undertook such an audit. We said, let us look at the use of technology by Nigerian universities. So we did an institutional portal technology audit of 154 universities at the federal, state, and private university levels. And the findings were very interesting. Part of what we found out was that a total of 99 and 98% of the universities that were sampled had websites and portals. And that was basically it. Now, when you come to open educational resources platform, the figure drops to 49%. When it comes to online learning platforms, e-learning platforms, the figure drops to 36%. About 41% of them have online libraries. But when it comes to things like exam, online bookshops, plagiarism checkers, staff rating portals, we're talking about less than 5%. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the problems are very deep, and that many universities, I can speak of the Nigerian university situation, were not ready as far as implementing technology solutions are concerned. Then there comes the policy directive from the Federal Ministry of Education that everybody should go online. And that happened before a conversation took place with the people who were actually going to manage and implement these technologies, the directors of ICT and their staff. Do they have the basic facilities? Do they have the tools? Do they have the resources to implement these policy directives that we're talking about? So you can see that we have fundamental problems, even in terms of providing research support. Apart from the tertiary education fund that is giving research to public universities, there are very few local agencies in Nigeria and in Africa that are supporting research in so many areas that will provide the type of solutions that we're talking about. So we believe that in order to manage the speed and scope of the disruptions that are imminent, creativity has to be the key factor. There will be a lot of hybridization that will take place. The way the scientific community has scrambled to find solutions to COVID-19 is the way that African educational policy leaders must come together to begin to put together step-by-step rule book to not just manage the disruption that is on us, but also to chart a strategic future. And for me, we're going to be exploring a host of hybrid situations that will take care of the various problems that we have isolated in terms of innovation, in terms of best practice, and in terms of what really works as far as the multiplicity of problems are concerned. I think yesterday the panelists mentioned some of these points. And I think Dr. Linda Mayer also mentioned, touched on it as well, that we need to put ourselves in a sort of crowdsourcing, crowd sharing, crowd formation environment where we throw everything into the hat and then we see what fits in best. It may not be a one solution for all of us, but at least we'll be able to get out best practice on a broad scale as far as this crisis is concerned. I'll leave it at this point.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Chifu. I think basically you have summarized the reality of the technology disposition of the university, at least in Nigeria, which shows basically that emergency varies from country to country. We probably are in code red in some countries, which means that the people are not, the nations are not ready in terms of their technology uptake. Then there is a fundamental issue. Now, as we go background, I would like you to consider the issue of leadership. Would you say that this situation that we're experiencing is a problem of leadership quality or strategic failure? And how do we get out of it? Because we are very good with making policies, but the implementation of those policies has been one of the problems that we have faced within Africa. So what do you think we need to do after we do not end up with, again, the talk shop making suggestions? What are the practical things that you think we need to now move in order for us to get to the new norm, be relevant, as Maya and Professor Konde said, to be relevant, to take charge of our future, to ensure that we understand the new story, that we are not in limbo between the old and the new story. I think it's very important for you to have that in mind. And so we're now going to look at the questions. We'll take questions from participants. I hope the panelists have all had access to the questions addressed. I hope that's correct. There are 9 questions already. We don't need to repeat answers to a question once we find out that some other person has answered the question. There are 9 questions already, but as I have said, we'll look at within the next three minutes, maximum 5. We would like you to address some of the issues that I raised very briefly, and then of course address any of the questions that relate to you. There is one very interesting one that says that 70% of students are willing to do blended learning in South Africa, but only 40% of our students have network capability. These are some issues. So I think any one of us, maybe Dr. Maya had raised this issue, want to address fundamentally against some of these issues. So I will start basically with I'm conscious of our time, with Professor Ono, given the issue, how is your oversight function, the oversight function of the National Assembly, of the agencies, of the National Universities Commission, of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, of all these agencies that are involved with tertiary education? How should those things change? What are they supposed to do differently? Because you cannot have a technology-driven institution where the agencies themselves have not themselves become technologically driven themselves. So please, sir, just about 3 minutes and then.
Yeah, I think the question has embedded in it the answer. We must completely change our focus and dwell fundamentally on the technological underpinning of our educational system. If we didn't get that before now, like Linda said, this is the time to know so. So even in our laws, in legislating on education, the place of technology must be central to it. We must re-engineer our curriculum, which is build supreme confidence in our young people as to the fact of the need for originality and the fact that we can do it ourselves and achieve all we need. We all know what our limitations are. If we did not take power, for instance, very seriously before, this is the time for us to take power very seriously and upgrade our infrastructure to ensure that e-learning, computerization takes its place in our educational system. In Europe and America today, because of the COVID-19 challenges, people are in their homes, but they are linked up to their schools. Learning is still going on. In Nigeria, where I come from, in Africa, in a lot of Africa, I'm sure that is not happening. That is the new normal, as we have said, and we've got to accelerate in that direction to ensure that we bring ourselves up to speed with current expectations in that sector post-COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda?
I think that it's a very good question. And what we face is that technology now is being forced to be implemented due to this very unusual situation that we find ourselves in. But we can't be delusional and think that e-learning is the answer for right now. It might be, because right now what we're busy with is emergency remote learning. And we are trying to build on those resource capacities where they exist. So within South Africa, we have some institutions, literally, where students, 90% of the students don't have devices, and neither do they have electricity security or internet connectivity. So it doesn't matter that we send them a device or we send them data or we send them whatever it is, they don't have electricity security. So, and they're living in rural villages where with 8 and 10 people living in a room that they're trying to share, and that is not conducive learning environment. So what is it that we do in this very peculiar situation? So absolutely, we have to invest in infrastructure. We have to look to the future. But right now, we need to look at modalities that work. So I don't want to give my age away, but when I started studying, I used to receive my study material in the post, and I used to submit my assignments, and I had my textbook, and that modality is something that we are putting in as emergency remote learning capacity interventions. So we need to look at the system holistically and say, yes, to the future, we have to bring all of these things in. We have to address systemic system issues that are impacting on our ecosystem. The cost of data, the cost of making sure that students are able to access open resource material, that learning content is not so exorbitantly expensive that nobody can afford to access that. I think that we are dealing with systemic issues and symptomatic issues at the moment. And when we look wholeheartedly at the ecosystem challenges that we're facing, it is going to take a lot of work. It is going to take a lot of forward planning. And the reality is that COVID-19 has forced this technology migration for us. So as much as we have, as we speak about e-learning and ubiquitous learning and mobile learning and multi-platform learning and all of these wonderful words, we must also be pragmatic and realistic with the situation that we're facing ourselves and look at different types of solutions that fits the system, and then obviously looking into the future with collaborative partnerships where we can readjust the system and re-emerge stronger for it after the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the issues that is coming up powerfully from some of the questions are the issue of collaboration, which was really handled yesterday. Maybe if we still have some time, we'll come back and find out exactly what are the new ways that we can collaborate within and outside of Africa, because most of our traffic has been south-north. How do we do intra-Africa collaboration to ensure and sharing, resource pooling and sharing of resources in order for us to create a new environment for the future? I think one of the things that when we talk about internationalization, for instance, basically it's like education tourism, mainly for many African institutions, rather than really whereas the networks and the relationships that should be built within each country and within Africa is non-existent. So I think these are part of the issues that you have been raising, the panelists have been raising, that it's no longer possible for us to depend on nations outside. I mean, in Europe and America, because basically we're in a world now where there is equity in crisis. As I think it was Professor Akonde who raised that issue, that there's equity in this crisis, and also there is opportunity if we must be relevant, if we take the right steps. So, Professor Chefo, leadership, what do you think? Are we in a mess because of leadership, or is there any strategic failure, or what do you think can be done in order for us to address the issue of leadership?
I think part of the challenge that I have noticed is we really don't do evidence-based policy making. And as such, when we write the beautiful proposals, beautiful policy actions, you ask critical questions: what is the evidence on ground? I like to ask many of my colleagues this question: if you are asked how much is University of Ibadan worth in terms of valuation, what figure would you come up with in terms of the physical assets and the intellectual assets? What will be your answer? There are not many vice chancellors in the Nigerian university system that will provide you such an answer. They don't know their net worth. You then ask the question, do you have an intellectual property policy? And again, a number of them will scratch their heads. The type of portal technology analysis that we did, many universities have not even done such analysis. So when you have policies that are made that are not based on empirical evidence, you begin to see that when you get to the point of implementation, challenges that you never imagined will come up. I mentioned in my earlier presentation that the directorates of ICT, who are supposed to manage some of the online learning platforms that are being presented, have not been put in the loop. You know, they've not been part of the conversation in terms of, are we ready at our university level to be able to deploy and implement these solutions that have emerged out of policy initiatives. So the leadership really does have a problem because they have not invested much in getting to the empirical evidence. You know, as scientists, as researchers, as academics, you know that once you need to go to the field to gather that evidence, and it is based on that evidence that you now come out with policy directives. But unfortunately, we are not doing that one, and the price is being paid. So it's important that we take a step back and say, okay, yes, this provides us an opportunity to do things differently, but let us really go to the ground and map that evidence, as it were, so that whatever decisions we take, whatever policy actions that we take, there will be a match between the evidence and the way forward. That's the way I see it.
Thank you very much. Professor Akonde. Professor Akonde.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please. Can we get your perspective? I raised certain issues with you earlier.
You know, I really believe that one of the interesting results of this pandemic is that it is going to test the resolve of institutions to respond in real time. This is not a theoretical pandemic. This is a pandemic that is challenging us in ways that we have never experienced before. But it allows us a chance to strategically assess where we are as an institution, what is important to us, and the necessary changes that we have to make thereof. I'll speak to one or two issues with regards to that. What this health pandemic has done is essentially shut us down, or attempted to shut us down. And I think more than ever, it elevates the importance of health education and the importance of making sure that we focus our curriculum on what matters. And in this particular instance, I think that when you think about the implications of health, of pandemics. We need to make sure that our curriculum at our respective institution reflects this, or to find tangible connectivity to resolving these issues. If you think, for instance, about the issue of tracing, I think institutions that have significant investments in technology, in engineering, in applied engineering, should seek to look to how they are going to be able to create curriculum that would address that particular that particular area. In the area of treatment, I think our experience with Ebola, with AIDS, HIV/AIDS, and other viruses over the years in Africa gives us an edge of sorts to be able to come up with solutions to resolve the current issues. And when I think about all the experimentations going on around the world for a vaccine, for a cure, I would be interested to see whether any of our African institutions who have some very significant scientists and health experts can actually rise to the occasion in terms of coming up with solutions to this particular problem. I think this is an opportunity for them to show up. It's a chance for them to rise to the occasion on a major global challenging situation. And these kinds of opportunities don't usually come often, but it's a very unique time that we can confront this. And then lastly, I think we have an opportunity for more collaboration. I would like to see institutional collaboration to help resolve issues of delivery of curriculum, of probably building sandwich programs where our students are able to receive curriculum and instructions from each other, and then leading to degrees. It's where we focus on what our best efforts are, what our competitive advantages are. We bring that to the table and find a way to come up with results that are significant and impactful. It's a pandemic, but it's an opportunity, and I hope that while we're trying to resolve these issues by dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, we also find a way to look around the corner, to think ahead about what this means for us as higher educational institutions moving forward. I believe that the future belongs to those that can see it. And so this is a chance for our institute, for our leadership to take a long-term view of what kind of results we want and how those results can better represent how we see our institutions respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. I'll go back to, we just have a few minutes left, but I think I need to, arising from what Professor Akonde has said, there are critical issues now in terms of catalyzation of transformation by government. Issues of infrastructure has been raised. There is the issue of even the capacity on ground, collaboration. It's important now to see at the level of the oversight, those who have oversight function, what are the critical steps that we need to take now in order for us to forge these links that we're talking about, in order for us to develop the infrastructure for power supply, providing technology, providing equity and access within the institutions. And not bogged down by the idea of legacy thinking, that there's a particular way of going around it. Yesterday we had a very interesting interventions in South Africa, inspired by the South African universities. But the question basically for us is, sir, Professor Ono, what is the National Assembly going to do differently this time in terms of conceptualizing what its role is in the national in higher education in Nigeria? And I think this also can apply to other African countries.
I think that question has been answered basically. And it is that the reality of the situation, is so stark that all of us can see it, and all we need to do as people in government is to re-engineer thinking, is to respond very quickly to this new reality and legislate in a manner that accommodates this new reality. But beyond legislating, like you have said, we've got to also build into our oversight the need to place emphasis on technology based on this new reality that we have found. And one of the things I would like to very quickly say, because like Linda said, even in South Africa, there are a lot of rural communities where there is no light and so on. I think that we are not doing well as a continent as it concerns dealing with solar and all the huge opportunities that solar technology avails us. I think it's time government begins to think seriously about it and see how we can, tap into that technological window and expand our solar applicability so that a lot of our communities can have power, because we need power to run this system. It is something we need to sit down, very, very quickly and deal with if we must respond in the manner we need to respond in this COVID and post-COVID era. That's what I like to say.
Thank you, Professor Chefu. You are occupying a very unique position now, and you can do a lot from your office because you have the ears of the Vice Chancellor. What will you do? What should be done? I shouldn't ask you what you will do, but what should be done in terms of developing intelligent frameworks for management? Because part of the issue basically is that we can put in a lot of money in terms of we can conceptualize our idea of e-learning and technology as the purchase of gadgets without necessarily translating into any tangibles for those who are going to be involved in the practice. Are there needs now for performance management strategies outside of what we do presently that we need to put in place? And then, of course, designing smart and intelligent framework for university management.
Absolutely true, Francis. Absolutely true. Before I go back to that question, let me touch briefly on what Professor Honor said in terms of the outer environmental requirements, and he especially mentioned power. And as you are aware, the federal government has started a pilot project of providing solar energy to a number of universities. I know the university in Ebonyi and that of BUK have deployed their own solutions, and it will be important for federal government to accelerate that particular process. The Nigerian energy energy supply company has also unbundled some of its facilities so that it is now easy for universities to operate independent power projects within their campus. And a number of private sector actors are interested in keying in and helping universities to make that investment. Now, it's important for us to look at the relationship between funding and the post-COVID-19 situation, because we seem to have forgotten that it has generated an economic crisis in its wake. And the funding options that are available to government, especially for private institutions, is going to also dry up. The type of resources that were available 2, 3, 4 years ago, or even last year, may not be readily available in the next 2, 3 years. And so where will the money come from to fund these technology initiatives that we're talking about? How are we going to deal with the issue of broadband internet access and data that is the oxygen of the new data-driven environment for staff and students? I know Lagos State University, for example, once they announced that they were going online, the first question that the students ask them is that who is going to pay for our data? Because as far as they're concerned, they pay their school fees. They're supposed to come to class and access it. If you are taking the classes online, you can't ask us to pay for data. So that conversation needs to be carried out. But to come back to the original question you asked, once you get money from wherever you're going to get and you put it into the system, how are we able to track it to ensure that it's going to be effectively utilized? How are we going to deploy performance management platforms within the university system to make sure that everybody is delivering on its goals? I think, again, I agree with Professor Kande that this provides us an opportunity that some of these technology support variables that we've been ignoring in the past can now take the front burner. And so enterprise resource platforms that are going to provide end-to-end management of university systems should now be in place. For example, promotion exercises, we know how we do it in our country. Plenty of paperwork, and there is no transaction engine at the back end that provides clean, clear, empirical evidence to show that this person is qualified, is due for promotions or not. How do we assess that the lecturers are doing their job? Many universities abroad would have platforms where the students can assess their lecturers, but in Nigeria, the picture is such that only 1.9% of our universities have that platform in place. So I think once we tie up that funding is going to be tight, but whatever funding comes has to be effectively managed, and the only way we can manage it is to use more technology at the level of ERP platforms to drive that process. And in this regard, there will be a lot of interplay of creative financing solutions, public-private partnerships, long-term investments that will be able to help the universities out of this type of situation.
Yeah, thank you very much. The parameters, for instance, for accreditation in a situation like this will have to change. As Professor said, it raised the issue of adaptation. And I think part of the problem often is the legacy thinking. We take solutions wholesale from other countries. We start adapting it to our circumstances. So it means that both at the level, we have to redesign. There's a need for redesigning and rethinking. And this is some of the things that you don't just rethink, you also have to redesign. Your strategies have to change. And I think you raised the issue of conversation, the need for a conversation. And it's good that you have a platform for effective conversation, Professor Cheku, which also needs to be put into position, and then, of course, network with the rest of Africa as we're talking about collaboration post-COVID-19. How do we collaborate? Professor Akonde, your experience with the American system is built fundamentally on partnerships and collaboration. What would be your recommendation, for instance, to Africa in terms of intra-Africa collaboration?
Well, I think that charity begins at home, and it's a chance for African-based institutions to begin a conversation about the things that they find most important, the salient lessons from this pandemic, and to identify the priorities that they are looking to find solutions to. And usually I've been involved in different partnerships with institutions, but I think partnerships begins with finding a commonality, a particular challenge that you want to confront together. Again, this pandemic is universal in its impact, and it gives us a chance to come together to start thinking about ways in which we're going to enhance our curriculum, ways in which we're going to come up with new ways of being able to ensure that we reach the audience that we are charged to reach, particularly the students. This pandemic also allows us a chance for us to focus our research on trying to find solutions to systemic problems of this nature, because the reality is that, again, I just don't want us to lose this opportunity, and not to use this opportunity to enhance our capacity to continue to meet and exceed our mission of our respective institutions. And I think that a lot of institutions the world over realize that in confronting the challenges that we face today, they can't do it by themselves. And so they're going to be looking for partners, collaborators. But I think it's important that when institutions engage potential partners, they are definitive, particularly in terms of what they're trying to do, making sure that you have sufficient synergy between those that you're going to partner with, so that together you can do more than you can by yourself. And then in closing, I will say this: I think that this pandemic has created a situation where, at the end of the day, you're going to have basically two results. You're going to have institutions that are successfully in pivoting and using this pandemic to focus on specific areas, whether it's medicine, health, addressing issues of infection, coming up with a vaccine, a focus on a different kind of curriculum. On the other hand, institutions that basically say, you know what, this pandemic is over, let's go back to the way we used to do things. Those that go back to the way they used to do things, what's going to happen to them is that they will put themselves at risk. And when we talk about irrelevance, they're essentially embracing irrelevance. And I believe that irrelevance is worse than death. And that when you become irrelevant, it's very difficult for you to come back out of it. And so don't miss this opportunity. Don't waste this opportunity. Let's find a way for institutions to be able to emerge from this stronger, better, more effective institutions at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Linda, finance is a big issue. We're talking about money. Whether you're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about providing access, there's a bit of funding. Yet we know that COVID-19 is just not only a problem of higher education, it's also a problem of business. We know that if incomes of many nations will come down, a nation like Nigeria that's oil dependent on oil cannot, or is not in a position to generate the amount of huge resources that we're talking about. So we have to be creative. So what are some of the creative interventions that you think we should begin to explore, think about as we have this conversation about how to fund this new?
So I think that in just starting off, I just want us to reflect. In 1965, Cambridge University was closed because of the plague, and they sent Isaac Newton home. And during this time that he was at home, he came up with calculus and the laws of motion. So I think, as all the speakers have been speaking, it is about harnessing this. So the new future and the opportunities and possibilities that exist must be seen in the context that Africa is resilient. We will get through this, and we'll be stronger for it at the end of the day. So these collaborative networks that we speak about, what does this mean practically for us? We need to start looking at repositories of access that we share across Africa. For example, where countries are translating material into Arabic, how is that becoming available to the rest of the continent? How do we have true open access and resourcing and collaborative opportunities for academic stature and advancement? So if I look into the future and what the new normal is going to be, it really is going to be about diversified education models. And as we develop and invest in infrastructure, that we start taking ownership for ourselves, and that we become our own preference, that we don't see our students leaving the continent. So I think also, when we speak about non-residential models and mainstream massification and niche HE markets, that these are things that we need to start We need to stop talking about, are we looking to the AU to find solutions for us? Or are we as higher education leaderships constructing ourselves into models of African councils of higher education and starting to share in all the resources and as they do in the rest of the globe. They have networks of institutions that share all these resources and they don't reinvent and reconstruct. So the leadership around the pandemic, we've seen many institutions that have come to the forefront and have been investing in and making their laboratories available and creating ventilators and a number of other equipment during this. Also, I think that when we look at domestic and regional challenges, why is that we're teaching our students that it is better to get a foreign education? And for me, the adaptability and what is quality assurance? We're still teaching curriculum and pedagogy and andragogy the way that our parents taught and their parents taught. And is it really bringing solutions to what it is that we're needing? I always tell people when they study a BCom degree, the curriculum is still the same. Even the jokes are still the same that we were telling 100 years ago. So it really is about adaptability, greater African collaboration, dedicated support programs, looking at at-risk students and building modalities that are going to bring systemic solutions for us into the future, student-centeredness, open access, and really getting solutions that work for us, not having huge amount of money flowing out of Africa, but seeing how we can optimize the money that we invest within Africa to ensure that our system is strengthened.
Thank you, Linda. I think it's now left for me to round up and then I'll invite Odinaka. I want to simply say, from my own perspective, I've gained a lot that we have to deal with issues of models. Our current models are at variance with the nature of our state. The curricula are incongruent with the university mission. And we need to focus on alternative modalities built on sustainable approaches to our higher education management. And then, of course, there is a need for intensive collaboration. We need to develop conversations, not just imposing policies based on without evidence, but we need to develop conversations. And then, of course, the cost of data issues, behavioral changes are necessary. We need to do three things: reform, restructure, and refocus. I think having said this, I would like to thank the panelists for taking time out to have this conversation, this dialogue. I want to also thank the This Day Business for giving me the opportunity to moderate this, and the Center for Higher Education and Innovation and Development for putting this together. I think, Odinaka, I hope you are ready there we had 84 participants now. We had 93 at the end, had 14 questions. I think it's been a great time with you participants, and thank you for finding the time to be part of this conversation. Odinaka, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Francis Ibukare, for an interesting moderation. It's really come to an end. It's an exciting 2 days of deep conversation, and I'm very, very happy with all the thoughts and insights that have come out of this conversation. And if you look at the number of people who have participated, yesterday we recorded over 300, and over people joining from over 20 countries across the world. And I must take this special opportunity to thank all the panelists, starting from Professor Habib of Fitch University, Professor Bazeo from Makerere University, Dr. Elozi from the American University in Cairo, Professor Abdul Kader, the Association of West African Universities, Professor Ahmed Bawa from University of South Africa, Senator Sando Ono, the distinguished senator, Professor Konde. I must re-emphasize Professor Konde has a new appointment as the president-elect of Champlain College in the US for making out time despite managing to the transition, your current position, and transiting to a new position. Thank you for the sacrifices. Then Professor Chefu, thank you so much for making our time and connecting with the Vice Chancellors to be part of this. And Dr. Meya, who played a dual role yesterday, she supported Professor Bauer halfway, and today she's here today again to commit over 1 hour 30 minutes on this. Thank you, Doctor. And finally, Professor Bukare, thank you so much for the moderation. And I think it's everybody who has participated in this will agree with us and everyone that the thoughts and insights from here, if acted upon, we go a long way in making Africa's higher education institutions better. And the idea is not to end the efforts by this conversation, which is why we said, how can we rethink and remake? Rethinking is making deep reflection, sharing ideas, and remaking involves actions. And yesterday, what came out so well yesterday was about collaboration. And in trying to collaborate with institutions, one institution trying to collaborate with another, it gets to the point where the institution, each institution must get prepared. Because if you are not prepared, you can't get the best out of any form of collaboration. And today, the emphasis is again also on collaboration, partnerships, internal looking, soul searching, looking for solutions from within Africa. Because he who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. The Africans know their problems better than other parts of the world. So when we look at ourselves and look at the institutions, and I always try to pride myself and tell other people that if you get into any university or any college, that is where you have the best collection of most intelligent people across the world at any point in time. So the government and the private sector should also engage the institutions to tap from their own knowledge rather than allowing so much knowledge within the institutions to rot away and expire. So on this note, I will say that for those who ask questions about the materials, after a while, within a few days, we will put up the video and the contents from this webinar for people to engage with further. And this will not mark the end of the conversation. We will continue to collaborate with organizations like Business Day and University South Africa to see, and even the Association Committee of Vice Chancellors, to see how we can take this conversation further and track the progress that has happened following the insights shared from here. So once again, I thank everyone from across the world who has participated in this webinar, and we hope that when we call again for you to attend another webinar where we will continue to share insightful knowledge, that you will oblige us and join us again. So on behalf of the Center for Higher Education and the collaborators, University of South Africa and Business Day, I thank you all for participating. Thank you very much and goodbye.